Again, I just happened to see one of Albanese's pre-election pledges in 2022 was to increase Australia's merchant fleet, and it was a wonderful objective. Now, I then found out that we had, I think, 12. That's right. We had 12 sovereign vessels or Australian flag flying vessels.
Yeah.
And I do understand a little bit about maritime travel, having done all the Somali piracy that I did, and flags of convenience.
You would know.
Crews and whether ship's officers, who actually owns the ship, who owns the cargo, the relation. Anyway, so he pledged to. So what did he do? He set up a committee.
It's phenomenal.
It's fantastic.
Really good. That's awesome.
I've got a committee running on
really
this.
Good.
Today, instead of 12 vessels, we've got 9. I don't know what happened to the other 3. But the actual target was 13. One extra ship. He couldn't even manage that.
Decommissioned probably from the wars, that's why. The end of the last...
Couldn't even manage that. So that was a pre-election promise from 2022 people that Albanese has broken.
The topic of defence, and forgive my rudeness, it makes me so angry. I can only imagine how you feel about that the moment I said fuel.
Well, I see that. I think Albanese is going to pump more money into defence. Now, again, Albanese and I think the coalition, the Labor, the coalition, are just as guilty. They say, look at the amount of money that we're putting into, and they think that's it. That's the end of it. Australia hasn't bought a serious platform since it bought the Collins-class submarines. Now, there are only 4 countries in the world that have corporate DNA in submarine warfare. Submarine development, submarine manufacture, submarine warfare. And those countries are the United Kingdom, the United States, Japan and Germany. Why are we buying submarines from Sweden, which hasn't fought a war since 1813?
Sweden, or was it France?
Sweden. No, the Collins-class.
Collins-class. Oh, the last
Swedish
one.
Boats.
Right.
And I think, in typical Australian fashion, instead of taking the thing as it was and building it, we had to interfere with the design. And as soon as you start cutting extra holes in it or cutting it in half and extending it by 5 meters, taking out the propulsion unit, putting in another one, they wanted to use, I think, American weapons systems with Australian communication systems.
Yeah.
It's a shambles.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing, in the 90s, I think, a submariner doing practice, and anyway, he was on the periscope and he said fire and nothing happened, and he slammed it shut, lower periscope, and he said the bloody thing doesn't work, or it's another failure. And of course, so we then go and buy a French submarine. Now, the French submarines, the French fleet was destroyed by the British at Oran in Algeria in 1940 to stop it falling into the hands of the Vichy French. And so the French have never engaged in submarine warfare. And so why are we buying, and then we're buying a nuclear boat, we're turning it into a diesel propulsion, we're cutting it in half and extending it, the Barracuda class, whatever that is, extending it, and then we're going to wonder why it's never going to float. But I've got an even better story. Albanese, it's all your fault. The break clause contract, the penalty for the break contract clause was about $60 million. Instead of paying that as the contract required and as was fair and commercially responsible.
This was Morrison.
This is Albanese.
Oh, really?
Remember, Morrison was the bogeyman.
I thought he cancelled the French and then he went with AUKUS.
He did,
right?
But that played out over some time.
Sure.
And then Albanese was playing best friends with Macron because Macron had insulted Morrison and said he was deceitful and a liar and so on.
Yeah.
And then Albanese was sort of there. Oh, I'm not, I'm the next prime minister. Albanese paid the French over $800 million. I've seen that in only one credible journalist.
I didn't know that.
Has reported that.
What a coward.
Instead of just fulfilling the contract, 150 plus, Albo, tell me if I'm wrong, he paid over $800 million, nearly $1 billion. And that's my point. They treat $1 billion as if it's just small. Can you lend me a dollar? And you roll $1 across the counter. It's
insane.
What they've done now is, with the budget, I saw somewhere that they've actually made a whole $2 billion worth of savings. A whole $2 billion worth of savings. Now,
when they're deploying 800 like that and giving it to the French
Well,
for submarines that only reverse.
Well,
I mean, for God's sake.
Well, look at what they've done. So the Sea Sprite helicopter in the early 2000s,
Yeah.
$1.3 billion. It never even flew because they took it off the shelf and started interfering with the airframe and the avionics and the guns and so on. It never even flew. We've had the armoured reconnaissance helicopter. It was never fully commissioned, ever. They took it out of service. I understand the pilots refused to fly it. We've then had the MRH-90. There was a crash. So they grounded them all, and then there were 46 aircraft. They're worth 20 million each. The Ukrainians were asking for them. They could have been sold to the 8 or 10 armies around the world that are still flying the MRH-90. What did we do? We cut them up and we buried them. That was nearly $1 billion worth of helicopter.
But we found 1.3 billion in savings, or 2 billion in savings.
We've saved 1 or 2 billion in savings.
Great.
And then, I mean, I see the headlines. They sicken me, these little headlines. So with Albanese's housing fund, which he was trying to set up with the Greens support.
Yeah.
The Greens were chuntering about something, and the little headline was Albanese chucks another 10 billion on the table. That is how they treat the billions of dollars. Just chucks another 10 billion on the table.
And just to put that in perspective, because I can't imagine a billion, let alone a trillion. Guys, just so you know, the Australian economy, it's roughly $1 trillion. It's about the size of the Texan economy. It's about the size of the Russian economy. Correct me if I'm wrong.